Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the ROKK Rundown. Today, Rodell is on the road. So we have, well, I'd like to say we've traded up to John LaBombard, who's on our team. I'd say it's an upgrade. Who's on our team now today to talk about what's going on in Washington. What's up, guys?
Good to be with you.
Great to be here again, and great to have our special guest, John LaBombard, one of our top rock stars at ROKK Solutions.
I feel honored.
It's just an honor to be here. The honor is ours.
All right, guys, so it feels a little like Groundhog Day. We're back again talking about the shutdown. I feel like we may be at this for a while. But there's been a lot going on, and there's been a lot of people talking about when the ground will shift and what will happen. When. Next week is a big trigger, I think, John, and you're talking to your friends up on the Hill, you're hearing from them. What kinds of things are you seeing that might shift next week that maybe might bring people back to the discussion?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we're getting to the point that we're starting to feel the bite, and more everyday Americans are starting to see the impact of what a federal government shutdown actually looks like. Of course, I think one of the biggest incentives for both sides to get to the table is going to be if our troops and any of our first responders, law enforcement start going without pay or without the resources they need to do their job effectively, keep Americans safe and secure. That's something that's going to be a real fire under the butts of Republicans and Democrats both. Up to this point, I'm not sure that bite has really been felt, so both sides have been able to continue posturing and sort of staying in their corners.
Ron, I think what I've been hearing, and I think maybe you have too, is that both sides so far feel like they have the upper hand. What do you think?
Yeah, both sides aren't feeling political pain. So we have a long way to go. It could happen next week. I don't know. I feel like we have the backstop of Thanksgiving travel, where you need enough air traffic controllers to handle record holiday traffic. That's a backstop. You're talking, another month and a half or so before we hit that.
That's right.
We'll have to see. But right now, no one's feeling political pain, so everybody's posturing.
It's been kind of wild, though. Like, Republicans on the House side, at a minimum, have really not been in town. They've been out, which has actually shown some friction and some cracks and some personalities really showing some signs of maybe the pressure that they're feeling themselves in leadership. You mentioned one to me.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what it was you saw.
Yeah, I'll say two things. The personalities on display have been fascinating, both in the House and Senate. In some ways, I think you see, obviously, the clear divide between left and right. You also see a little bit of a House-Senate tension here, the House posture being, we did our job, we passed our CR, and sort of shoving it onto the Senate. But a lot of these negotiations, when you get down to it, have to do with the personalities of the actual principals and the lawmakers in the room, around the table. You know, the one making news this week is former Congresswoman Porter from California. She's trying to launch this gubernatorial bid. And, look, the thing that is interesting to me is that when you're in an atmosphere, and I think both of you know this, a congressional office, a campaign office, the center of gravity really is that lawmaker, that principal. They're the ones who set the culture, they're the ones who set the expectations, who kind of set the standard for how you treat one another with respect, or unfortunately, I think as these videos show, sometimes with a lack of respect to the people who you work with and who work for you. And my years on Capitol Hill showed me that sometimes the most eye-opening thing is that you meet somebody who you really agree with down the line on lots of policy issues, lots of political issues, and you realize, God, they're a really wretched person to be around. And sometimes the other great flip side of that coin is sometimes I, as a Democrat, would find and work with a Republican principal lawmaker and thank God we don't agree on anything politically or policy-wise, but you are just a genuinely good person, and I would love to work with you and love to be around you. So it's another interesting case study this week.
Yeah. And Ron, you saw one too. You have another where you saw the minority leader in kind of a tough spot.
Yes, absolutely. Before I get to that, but imagine if Speaker Johnson had called Republican members back and they were in town with absolutely nothing to do.
Oh, yeah.
The press conferences,
fun to watch.
You never know where the message is going to go.
Good point.
Right?
Yeah.
And what they're going to be doing. But I did watch CNBC this week. There was an interview with Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. CNBC host Joe Kernan was asking him, really, you decided to shut down the government based upon, the ending Obama healthcare subsidies. But that was in the big One Beautiful Bill, which passed the Congress and was signed into law. So you're essentially thwarting the law. And he was taken aback. He didn't really know how to answer that question. He said, well, Republicans need to come to the negotiating table. He said, what do you mean negotiating table? If this was the Biden Inflation Act or other Biden acts that passed and Republicans shut down the government because they didn't like that it was signed into law, how would you answer that? And he really didn't know where to go with it.
Wow.
And I was fascinated with that.
It seems like everybody is trying to figure out how to not step in it this week.
Yeah.
And you make that point really well by saying that keeping members back in their districts, they're talking about what they passed, they're talking about the legislation, and they're staying out of trouble because when they do come back to town, they're in the Capitol, and you know this better than anybody, both of you, there are reporters that are around, and inevitably, because we're living not in a 24-hour, but a 24-minute news cycle, someone will say something that will ignite a new debate. Right?
That's exactly right. They're not meeting with their constituents. They're not meeting with local leaders. They're in Washington with nothing to do because the government shut down.
And there's no real good answers when you're a rank and file member of Congress who's not the person at the table negotiating this and you're not a party leader. What do you say? You either have to defend the party line and defend a government shutdown, which no Americans like. And by the way, American voters blame both sides roughly equally. I think both sides like to say, and my side likes to say, well, 10 more points of voters blame Trump. Well, they're also blaming you. Nobody's happy about this, and nobody comes out of a shutdown a winner, in my view. But a rank and file member is going to have to either defend the party line or sort of behave as if it's okay that the federal government is shut down. There's really no winning. So I, too, would be keeping my head down if I were them.
Yeah, it feels that way. All right, so last thoughts for today's episode. What did I miss, Ron?
All right, so this week, I was really psyched about this. C-SPAN is coming out with a new show called Ceasefire. It is like the CNN's old Crossfire for those Gen X and above that may have seen it, but it's going to be a show about civility. It's going to be bringing in members from both parties, from both sides, to talk about issues in a much more civil way than shouting at each other on the other cable shows.
I love it. I can't wait to tune into
Yeah.
it. So thank you guys both for joining me. And you, make sure, listener and viewer, make sure that you join us next week, because if you want to know what's going on in this town, you've got to be with us for the ROKK Rundown.
Who doesn't love that tagline? Come on, if you're not a great American, that was an incredible one.
We're working
and it's
on it.
going to get better and better
That's
every
right.
show. Get ready for it, people. Get ready, America.